So the story is a humble, or not so humble, science teacher in Boston is trying to save his school's music program and decides to become an MMA fighter because you get paid even if you lose. Well, he actually wins a few, and the UFC invites him to fight an actual UFC exhibition match. And that is the majority of the work we did. We had the last 20 minutes of the film, and the filmmakers, Frank, and the studio supervisor, Pete Travers, really wanted to put them in a real environment and see the crowd, and not just the typical boxing films where you see black behind the first couple of rows of fans and nothing else. So the challenge here was really creating the CG stadium, of course, for the upper tiers, because we shot in a much smaller stadium than was needed, and then filling it with 25,000 screaming fans and have them react properly to every single second and moment in the fight. It was definitely not a small challenge. We had a very short production schedule of about 3 months to do 20 minutes of these are pretty intense visual effects. We're basically replacing 80% of the frame in many cases. And we rotoscoped everything instead of doing any green screen, as you're not seeing the green screen here. And I'll show you guys that in a few minutes and talk about why we decided to do that. But that was really the basic scope of it, and it really does change the impact of the film. And you can actually see the crowd, especially here in the last shot, cheering as he wins, and not just seeing black behind him, and not just cutting to crowd reaction shots and putting him in this epic scale. I'll just go back to that last shot real quick. The scale you get from this. This is really, our star, Kevin James, in a UFC ring, and this is really a crowd of 25,000 fans screaming around him. And it's just different when, with boxing films that cut away to crowds reacting from real events. This was all done, where you get to see Kevin James in the video monitors in the ring, and at all times see the crowd behind him. And it just really does, as you watch the film, it really does impact, even if you might not, call out right away because you're used to seeing crowds in fights, but not really in movies. So it was a really fun challenge, really fun to work on, and really the biggest challenge was the amount of data it took with all the crowds we had to deal with and the amount of rendering in the short amount of time we had. And that's where ZYNC comes in handy, which I'll also talk about in a little bit. So now that's there. Let's just go and jump into Nuke. And there it is. So Nuke set up here, one thing we knew is, we had 20 minutes of visual effects to create just for this one scene, but, especially with Nuke, the benefit of setting up a lot of stuff in advance and creating gizmos really helps us to, standardize these things so that once we get these things figured out, like, okay, where's the stadium going to be, how are we going to build the people, and things like that, Nuke really allowed us to, build these preset things so we could get a comp version 1 out very quickly and then keep refining it over time. So first I want to talk about the roto and why in the heck did we do that. So this is an original, let me show you the plate first actually. So here's the plate, the original plate, and here's our resulting comp, the final comp rather. So you can see, this is what you would typically get in a fighting film. You just see black behind everybody, and you typically wouldn't shoot this wide because then it's kind of obvious you're not seeing anything back there. And it really is a big change when you get the crowd cheering and the luxury boxes and the UFC banners across. It really does make a big impact. So again, there was the original plate for the shot, and here's the final. So let's go back into the roto. So here's a quick look at our roto. And I'll let this play back real quick. So we actually had to roto everything on layers. It almost looks like we're doing a stereoscopic conversion on this because of all the different layers we have. We had to roto the crowd that you do see, which is only a couple of rows, the cameramen, the ref, both fighters, of course, the cage, the floor, and of course you can see there's actually no fence or cage around the fence because we need to be able to put people behind that, and we certainly didn't want to have to roto fences and cages for the entire 20 minutes. So we just pulled those and put them in CG. And the reason we did a roto instead of green screen is because for a scene like this that's highly stunt heavy and takes lots of camera choreography, to wrap this thing in green screen, you'd have to wrap it so big that you'd never see anything outside except the first 2 rows of crowd. And you're always going to go off the green screen. You can't build a perfect dome green screen without lights. You'd see the lights somewhere. You have to put rigging in somewhere. So there's no way to do that. So what we have to do is we still have angles where we're doing tons of roto and the camera wants to, look up, straight up, for example, or things like that. And it just wasn't conceivable. And it really was going to slow down set a lot to even try to get green screen moved in per shot. This is a very choreographed, very complex fight scene. It's literally a 17.5-minute fight in the movie. It's not easy to do this, and we want to let the actors and the stuntmen perform, what they're worried about is the fighting. They don't want to have to break for half an hour every shot to set up a new green screen or relight it or re-angle it, et cetera. I would say 99% of the fight was actually fought by Kevin James, and he did an amazing job. So the last thing we wanted to do was add an additional challenge or have him waiting around when he's ready to, start fighting. So that was the need. Because of that, though, of course, it was tens of thousands of hours of rotoscoping required. And, it had to be done very, very well, of course, too. Luckily, our bad guy fighter is Balls, which helped a lot. But this was really a major part of the production. And as I said, we did the whole thing in about 3 months. And the last 60 shots were turned over to us only 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks prior to final delivery. So really had a crunch schedule and really had to, pump up the render machine, especially at the end, to get this done. So those are the boring stuff, but I don't think it's, we can't ignore it. And it's such a vital part of production these days that now that I've shot a whole film like this without using green screen, I'm actually really kind of rooting for more of that because roto, depending on the hair, of course, of the actors you're changing, roto is really just it's a clean way to do it. You don't have to slow down production. And really a lot of what this comes down to these days is, are you slowing down production on set? Because that's really the time that matters most, because every time we slow it down, that's one less day they don't get to shoot, or that's one less scene the director doesn't get to have. And, as a supervisor, our job is to get the director what he wants as best you can. And by allowing us not to slow them down on set is a major way you can do that. And something that, really has been an awesome situation since really kind of doing it this way. So the other thing, besides roto, of course, we had major CG assets to handle. So let me go ahead and take a look at our CG. I'll go ahead and expose this up a little bit. So this is the upper tiers. And the upper tiers we did create in the CG. So we have our luxury box level. We have what we call here Tier 3, and then we have Tier 4 and Tier 5. And this is the MGM Grand in Las Vegas that we modeled and built and put on top of the stadium where we shot, which was in Massachusetts. And you can see here we have the crowd interacting, and we have all these nice, some of them are crowd tiles, some of them are CG people, but they're so far away that their reactions weren't as important, and we didn't have to do as much detailed animation to make them look real. And that was really the idea. So from tiers 3 through 5, it was going to be CG people or crowd tiles, individual crowd cards rather, and for tiers 1 and 2, which are much closer to the ring, we did a pan and tile system. And that we did in a Gizmo, which I'll show you guys in a second as well. But let me bring this viewer over here and take a look at those. So we spent an entire day shooting crowd tiles of the audience watching the fight for 20 minutes. So literally they watched and performed and reacted to the fight from over 18 different angles, because we wanted to get different sections of the stadium. So you'll see different angles we craft here. And again, these are only going to be used for the first couple layers, or a couple tiers rather, the lower tiers. And you can see we grabbed the corners, and we just shot them reacting. So they had to literally, every time we did a take, we rolled for 20 minutes, we had to put them in the different UFC lighting, because the UFC lighting changes throughout the fight, and we had to have that animation in. We had to have them sitting and chatting before a fight. They had to be reacting as if someone got punched in the face. They had to be reacting as if someone won. And we had to do that 18 times with these amazing background actors that were very awesome to do this all day for us. And so because of that, they get to be in the movie about 18 times a shot, because they get to be seen so much. So what we did was, now that we had these tiles, we projected them onto our very simple set geometry. We realized because we have these built-in angles, as long as we project these tiles from the proper, from the actual accurate camera where we placed it when we shot on the day, we can easily project them onto very simple geometry and not have to do full complex, we're not modeling seats, we're not modeling ramps, very, very simple, just basically a ramp of the representation of the stadium. And this will load in a second. The textures are applying right now. And you'll actually see that in a second here. So this made it really efficient because we already had a lot of data coming in with these tiles. I mean, these are all, 2K DPX frames, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them because we had 20-minute takes. And we had to have all that data available to us because we had to be able to editorialize the crowd per shot. So sometimes the director might say, oh, the crowd's reacting too big right now. Oh, the crowd's not reacting big enough. and we have to be able to adjust that. And when you have 18 different tiles being built that you're going to be adjusting, to have to do that individually would be a nightmare, to say the least. So we built our Gizmo to be able to handle that too, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But as you can see, as these things are loading up, really it's just, you know, it looks really weird from this angle. But we have our first tier, which is down here, and our second tier up there. And it looks weird looking through a camera that isn't the actual tracked camera. But we are actually, because we're projecting these on geometry, even though it's that simple geometry, we even get multiplaning between the crowd sections. And we're able to really achieve 90% of our shots just using Nuke's pan and dial and projection system. And you can see all the different cameras that are in here. That's because every single section has its own camera that it's projecting from. And that's, well, of course, because they're being projected from exactly the point at which they were taken. So let's just take a look at that. And then we have different cameras for actually seeing the cam man. So this camera right here is actually the one that's doing the rendering on this shot. So we're really looking into this section over here. Just back out a little bit. And then we can get a really good sense of what we're seeing. So all of this, the 3D system is relatively simple, though. There's only really a few nodes here. Really the complexity in this part is all the different sections that are coming through. And each one of these backdrop nodes is an actual section of our crowd. So if we look at it and say, okay, section P, tile G, let's go ahead and take a look at what this is. And we can see it's this corner of the ring. So this section P, tile G, is matched to our Gizmo, which is right here. And I can actually go and see section P. Okay, section P is right here. So I can editorialize it right here, right in my Gizmo. And every single one of these, again, section O, and it's telling me which tile, section K, section J, et cetera. And in here is pretty simple stuff. It's just, you know, some little roto, which we brought into roto around the heads of the people, so we didn't have to use anything but them. And then some stair lights to make sure we get these nice little lights back in. And some mats as well, so we could actually rotoscope and, or not rotoscope rather, but color correct the skin, the bright colors and things like that separately, which we also all do from the Gizmo, which I'll show you in a second. Because of the UFC lighting, the way it moved through the scene, you know, just certain ways, certain whites would pop differently, so we had to actually edit those individually. But again, we did it all through the Gizmo. So if I go back into our main node graph, you'll see that everything we're just looking at is in this tier 1, version 1 fight lighting, moderate cheering. So we actually have labels on telling us, okay, this was for fight lighting, and there's moderate cheering. So they're happy, but they're not going crazy. And that's when I open that. That's what brings us to these sections again. So rarely, when we were working on the movie, do we actually have to go into and show us the node graph baked into this Gizmo. We were able to do everything we needed right from the Gizmo controls. So you see, if we look at our main control, we could change things like format, so we can do proxy versus not proxy. We could actually even change the speed of the crowd, because there was a lot of slow motion shots in the film, and we might need 25% or half or original speed. And now granted, that's really not that fancy. You would think, well, who cares? You're just changing the speed. But we actually pre-rendered all of these plates. So literally all these plates are available 3 different times. So that's even tripling the amount of data we need. It's actually more than tripling, because when we slow things down to quarter speed, now we have 4 frames for every 1 frame initially. But we did this because by pre-rendering them, it really sped up the script. We were able to use O-flow and get good motion blur and things like that added to it, or at least accurately. So this way, when we were doing it, we didn't have to re-render this stuff. And again, it added all that data, but we'd rather have data that ZYNC has to access to render rather than us have to render, you know, O-flow speed changes every time. That would just get too heavy. So I can even display tile name. This would allow me, while I'm actually working, to show me, okay, this would be tile P. It would actually display a P over the letter, which is pretty cool. And defocus was all tracked, and motion blur was all set up right within the Gizmo again, so you wouldn't have to go back into the node graph and change things. This is all very controlled again from the Gizmo. Even color. So I have my overall crowd color. I have my skin tones. I have my whites. I even can change the depth map, which we're using for some defocus, and the hockey wall as well, which is this lower wall. So let's actually go into the script and take a look at that. So if we take a look at what this is rendering, and I'll just take a second. We can make a couple adjustments, which would be cool. Oh, this other viewer here. There we go. And it's drawing. There we go. So here we can see our crowd. And I can go ahead and change my saturation and my overall crowd color, and I'll just take everything down. I'll undo that, and I can go in and do it all right from in here. So if I want to, if they're a little too warm, I need to make them a little bluer, I can do that. And it's affecting everybody. If I need to pick individual tiles, that's the only time I'd have to go back into the original node graph and actually tweak individual tiles, but we color matched them all already anyway. So any variances in exposure or color, they were already matched. So rarely do we have to actually go back in to the node graph to change individual tile color. So as you can see, I can really break this right now and do some stuff like that. And I can do that again with skin tones. If I want to make the skin tones way brighter or way darker, which is really a common thing, as well as saturation of them. We can do that here as well. And make them way brighter, things like that. So really the benefit of this was that this was really our goal. We knew going forward in this project that, you know, this isn't overly complex visual effects work, but it became complex because of the production needs as far as speed goes. And we knew we couldn't be spending, you know, a week per shot or even 3 or 4 days per shot to get a comp version 1 out. So by building this gizmo and having a system in place that allows us to literally slap this thing into a script and then render it through a camera, we can get a comp version 1 out in literally an hour, especially when we're rendering on multiple machines on ZYNC. So that was vital for us because we couldn't wait till something was kind of good to get it to Editorial and have them approve our crowd. We had to get stuff moving quickly. So literally, as soon as the shot was turned over to us, we'd start roto on it right away. We'd start camera tracking on it right away. And as soon as tracking and was done and roto was even close to done, we would render it, throw it on the tier, get the tiles in, and send it up to Editorial so they could approve that our crowd was doing the right thing. And that really allowed for a smooth transition and allowed us to get, you know, 333 shots done in 6 months pretty quickly. And again, so like I said before, we have a start frame tab here as well. So every one of these crowds could change separately. We can make them into a wave if we wanted to, simply by changing the start frame that we have here. Pretty awesome and handy. This is, again, the editorial aspect of things, which I know that isn't something that exciting, but to have all this at your fingertips to be able to make changes very quickly was absolutely paramount. And the real cool thing about this gizmo is there's virtually no code involved in creating this. This is all done just using Nuke's gizmo tools, using the old right-click, manage user knobs button, and going through and just setting this up. And yes, it took time, but we started as we would start with anything. We built our first node graph, and once we felt like this was working right, then we turned it into a gizmo and gave the artist the control we would need to be able to not have to jump into the node graph as often and be able to just use the gizmo. The only bit of code we really did at all for this was you have this button down here that says copy settings from another tier 1 node. So what this is needed for is because once you start changing the node graph inside, well, you can't take in a new gizmo anymore. At that point, you've broken anything that you need to do. So we just coded this thing that allowed us to copy settings from one tier node to another. That way, if we upgraded the tier node or you wanted to grab color from someone else or things like that, you can copy those here. That's the only bit of code in here. Everything else is just, you know, Nuke's typical gizmo system, which is extremely powerful and, you know, allowed us to really get this film done in time. And so now let's talk about, again, the kind of the boring part. All these different tiles, you can see we have 50% retime. I also have 25% retime, all these different things. And it's a lot of data. This shot in particular, just with all these tiles it was using, we were touching over 190 gigabytes of data per frame to be able to render it. Now let's go back to the original comp now. We'll play that real quick. So there we go. So to create this, really 190 gigabytes per frame to get this thing rendered. And also, it's pretty CPU heavy as well. Each one of these frames, even though Nuke's fast, it was about 5 to 10 minutes a frame. Not exceedingly long, when you, especially when you think there's like a CG render, but for compositing, that's pretty heavy because we really iterate a lot. So we'll render this thing, you know, 200 times, 250 times before we final it. And we really, you know, needed to have that power. And what we used ZYNC for was to, and we used it for 100% of the rendering on Here Comes the Boom was done on ZYNC. And the best part about it is that we don't have to predict when we're going to need machines. We can render on 1 machine, we can render on 25 machines, we can render on 100 machines. And for the majority of the show, we were basically on a 25-node ZYNC farm. And for the last 2 weeks, we were elevating that to 100 and 150 CPUs on a given day to get those last few shots through. And that allowed us that flexibility without the cost of bringing in additional machines that we wouldn't know if we need them or not. We wouldn't probably have power needs set for them, because 150 machines, I mean, I don't even know how we get them into our building, let alone power them up and get them networked and have the switches needed and everything. So having that at our disposal was huge. And what ZYNC does with that especially is the data management side of things. So all this data, this 190 gigabytes per frame, that's all up on ZYNC. Once we uploaded it, we don't touch it again. And ZYNC will, once something's uploaded on ZYNC, ZYNC leaves it there and will not upload it again unless it's changed. And once someone in our studio has uploaded something, it's accessible to everybody in our studio. So once I upload, say, the foreground plate for the shot, and someone else needs to use it, they can use it and render it on ZYNC without ever having to upload it again, because again, once data's up there, it's going to stay there. And the most interesting thing about this is we don't have a great internet connection. Our internet connection was, at the time, was a standard business connection, like 25 megabyte or megabits upload. 10 megabytes upload. It was very slow. And we put terabytes of data up there. And all it took was a little bit of pre-planning, and luckily feature films especially help us with that, but also any kind of long, complex commercial with that much data would have time as well. So we'd upload the data in advance. And even before artists start working on shots, it's already there, it's already ready to go. And, you know, again, once it's there, it stays there. And really, it allowed us to also work with a lower power server and not really very fancy infrastructure internally as well. Because with all this data, if we were rendering locally, even if we had the machines for it, our server would be getting destroyed from all the render nodes accessing all the server. With ZYNC, once it's up on ZYNC, it doesn't touch our data infrastructure anymore. So that is, our server never slowed down because they're rendering. Once it's off of our system and ZYNC's rendering it, we're not touching it, which was really nice to offload all of that up into ZYNC systems and just not worry about it anymore. It was really key, because that also lets us work faster. So once the shot's up on ZYNC and rendering, we're working on the next shot and, you know, ready to keep going, which was huge. And let's just do real quick, let's just go ahead and jump into ZYNC. Let me show you what a render looks like there. To kick off a render in ZYNC, it's just like you would expect with Nuke. You just go to the render menu and render on ZYNC. And that's literally all it is, and you get some options. Oops, I gotta save my script. Render on ZYNC. And it gives you options. I can pick how many machines I want. In this case, I'm gonna pick 25. Let's make it meaty. And I have two choices. I have ZYNC 20s and ZYNC 88s. ZYNC 20s are great for Nuke, and it is a lower cost machine. And ZYNC 88s are also extremely great for Nuke. They're higher cost machines, but they will pair through jobs on Nuke especially. I'll just keep on the lower cost ZYNC 20s because those are great. I'm going to change my chunk size to 2 so that I'm rendering 2 frames per every task, and that'll just have it happen a little quicker for me. And I'll click OK. Oh, and actually, real quick before I do that, this upload only button, this is how we would upload assets to ZYNC prior to needing them. So once you click upload only, and you just say OK, there's no other settings to fill out, boom, ZYNC starts uploading everything. And it uploads it based on the Nuke script. So there's no manual, okay, upload this background crowd and then upload this foreground plate and upload this geometry. ZYNC looks at your Nuke script, determines what needs to get uploaded, and uploads it all automatically. You have literally nothing to do manually. And that same thing goes for Maya. And all the CG we created in Maya as well was the same situation. You kick off a job in ZYNC, it uploads it once the assets are there. You don't have to upload them again. And it creates those CG frames for us, this upper tier here. And because the CG for Boom was completely rendered on ZYNC as well, that all of our CG, once it's rendered, it gets downloaded back to us instantly, and it also stays on ZYNC. So when I want to use this in my composite and I'm ready to render it, I don't re-upload any of the CG. The CG was created on ZYNC, and it's going to stay on ZYNC. Another big part of what made ZYNC and so successful for us on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And in a second, it should say job submitted to ZYNC, and there it is. So let's go check it out in Chrome. And there it is. It just popped up there. And while that's starting, let me show you guys a job that already finished the same task and some of the ZYNC settings. So you can see it tells you the path to my actual Nuke script. That's pretty cool that it's all local. At no point when you're using ZYNC do you see cloud-based paths or some random thing that doesn't mean anything to you. The entire interface is built to look and feel like a local render farm. So at no point are you going to feel like, oh, this is some weird convoluted thing. I'm uploading stuff and what's going to happen to it. Hopefully I get some frame crash sometime. It's totally the opposite of that. We built it really to be a system where artists can learn how to use it very quickly, and it looks and feels and touches and all that just like a local render farm. So everything is local. Your outpaths are local. I can even see my Nuke log as it's rendering. So if I'm doing any troubleshooting, I can see what's going on, where my RAM is being spent, etc. I can look at my job stats. I can see how long it took to render. So I rendered the entire time for my average task was 2 minutes and 54 seconds. And what machine I rendered on, I can change the job options if it was still running. That would actually do something, but it's not running right now. This one's still going. And I can even view thumbnails, which I think I turned on for this job. Let me see. Yeah. So you can actually see thumbnails of your completed frames right inside the browser. And once you're seeing a thumbnail here, the good news is it's already back on your local server too. So when frame 1 is done, it's back down on your local server, ready to go, and just like you rendered, and it went where you told it to go. So there's no moving files after, there's no, any of that you would expect with some remote renderer. This goes back to my server exactly where I told it to go, and as soon as frame 1 is done, I can show it to a client, show it to a supervisor, director, etc. You don't have to wait for all 55 frames to finish to get your first frame, which is pretty cool. And then you have cool ways to track your usage. So I can see my little heat map here of, so today I've launched 25 machines. This is how much it's cost me so far. I can see how much storage I'm currently using. I can even see my bills. So it's a daily bill system, and I can see right here, okay, here's my first bill. Let's take a look and see what I got. Okay, yep, that's right. I used 25 for that day, and there it is. And again, this stayed around forever, so you always have that information. And let me talk one more thing about. So the other thing that's great about ZYNC is it leaves all these. You can see all these completed jobs. If I click Show Completed off, it's only going to be the jobs that are currently running. But if I show completed, it keeps these jobs forever and ever and ever. So if you want to find an asset that you used for this shot a long time ago, you want to go back and say, oh, I want to remember where there was a great smoke element we used. What is that? You can actually go into this job, click the Nuke log, and it'll show you the Nuke log. In a second anymore. Oh, I'm in the wrong job. That's what it is. There it is. So it'll show us the actual Nuke log. And we can actually go through and see, okay, what was that file again? I know this was the job. And where's my smoke file? Let's go see here. Oh, yeah, there it is. That's it right there. So let's grab that, and I'll know where it is. Let's restore it from that. So you actually use this as an archive system as well. And if you didn't delete the project yet, it's still up on ZYNC as well. But you can reload this job now no matter how old it is. It's really a powerful way to keep track of everything. And down here at the bottom is the machines that we're actually currently running. So you can see right now, another user besides me is running the ZYNC 88s, and they're running a Maya job, which is pretty cool. And V-Ray 2.3. So this is all rendering now, and again, just like anything else, we can actually go look at, let's actually spy on that job a little bit. So we can see these are the ones rendering, and the progress is here, 16% on this job. We can see the Maya log. We can see the V-Ray log. And I have no idea how long these renders take, so I don't know if they'll be done soon or not, but once if you're done, those are done means back on your local server, ready to use on a frame or task-by-task basis. So you're not waiting for the entire job to finish. This is just like if you run it on a local rendering farm. And I think it's probably good to start the Q&A if you guys think that's good.
All right, thanks, Sean. So, guys, if you haven't yet, if you can find your way to the Q&A panel, then we'll start answering some of your questions. So, first off, I think it was actually, you made a very interesting point, because I was looking at cloud rendering a while ago, and I worked on a show where our rendering habits as our production escalated absolutely destroyed our network infrastructure. I mean, it didn't make it melt or anything, but it certainly brought production to a halt. So it was very interesting to hear how that point about cloud rendering actually alleviating that sort of bottleneck in terms of facility infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure. That was, we didn't realize it until the time either, but we realized quickly how important it was because of the amount of data every single shot was touching. Even working locally just to do the shots, we were pretty much putting our stuff at max. To have rendering, especially at 100 machines, touching all that data at the same time, I mean, there's just no way it would have happened.
Okay. So we have one gentleman that's asked us, hi, I wonder if the connection fails while downloading, if ZYNC reports failing frames missing.
Say that again, Jordan?
So we have a question about whether or not if your internet connection fails during the download phase, can ZYNC pick up where it left off and warn you which frames are missing, or do you have to find that and kind of ask it to re-download those frames?
Yeah, so the best part is about losing an internet connection or losing power to your entire facility, everything's on ZYNC. So ZYNC doesn't stop doing anything. As far as ZYNC is concerned, it doesn't care if you have an internet connection. Once your job is starting to render, as this one is, for example, ZYNC has it. I can shut this whole system down. I can unplug everything from the wall. I can, take an axe to my hard line. ZYNC has this stuff now. It has the data. It has the CPU frames. It's creating it. It's doing everything it needs to do. If I was to lose internet right now, ZYNC finishes the job, and it simply waits and it lets go of the CPU. Once it's done rendering, it'll let go of the CPU, so you're not paying for any additional rental time. But once you get your internet connection back, ZYNC will then just download the frames to you. It doesn't actually stop the render. It doesn't fail the frames. It finishes everything. And when you turn your internet back on or you get it back on, then the frames will download. Really important step there. So like for me, especially when I do these demos on occasion, like at SIGGRAPH, I'll kick off a render from my hotel room, close down my laptop, then it no longer has internet, bring it over to the show floor, open up the laptop, and boom, my frames start downloading instantly.
Okay, sounds great. All right, so does anybody have any questions for Sean about okay, we do have one more. It says, I'm curious about the internet connection utilized for this project. The up and download speeds. Was it a commodity cable and internet connection, shared lines, EOC, T3, etc.? I think you mentioned you only had a 10 megabit up.
Yes, we only had a 10 megabit up, and the download we had was better. It was 25 or 35 down. Or maybe even 50 down, but it's really the upload that kills you. The download, because we do it frame by frame, doesn't matter what that connection is, it's the upload. And we only had a 10 megabit, not megabyte, upload connection, and it was fine. We literally terabytes and terabytes of data were uploaded and downloaded for this job.
Okay, so Nuke-related question. Someone asks if all the match moving, was it done in Nuke, or did you use it?
No, the match moving for this was done. We had a separate team doing it. They were in our office, but we used Synthesize to do the match moving. We did use, for some of the shots with less camera movement, we did use the camera tracker in Nuke. And the reason for that isn't that Nuke couldn't handle the work. It's just that we had specialists that knew Synthesize better, and it allowed us to get through the shots quicker. And we really didn't want compositors for this job with such a short turnaround time, having to tweak tracks and things like that. There was just too much other stuff they had to do to make this work right. We couldn't spend the extra time for the actual compositor to tweak the track.
Okay, and then Todd, there's one here for you about ZYNC support for Moto.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at adding that in the next several months, support for Moto for sure.
Okay. Well, guys, we have some more time, so if you've got any questions, please do keep them coming. And I think the question about can ZYNC render single frames across multiple nodes definitely is a reference to distributed rendering.
Yes. Yes, so it does do distributed rendering through V-Ray. So if you want to throw in a single frame, you can do that with ZYNC and V-Ray.
Okay. So we've got a question about Roto here. So this person's asking, when you agreed to Roto the whole show, did the production company compensate you for the extra work over keying?
Yes, it wasn't. It really wasn't. The budget wasn't approved until we'd already talked about doing Roto anyway. So we were paid for all the Roto. We flat bid our jobs. So that was all, agreed to prior to us agreeing to do that. And certainly it would have been different pricing for keys, certainly. But even now that it's done in hindsight, I would have made the same decision again, because by not having just a flat green screen out there where we could have shot this thing on a stage, having the depth of the first tier pre-baked in for us with the original plate here. I'll show you that again. So this is the original plate, and if I gamma up, you'll see, although there's not much detail back there is some, and that helped as far as like lining shots up goes and even tracking and things like that. So although there was more expense with Roto, I don't know if it would have been so much higher that the studio would even had an issue with it. And still, it was, for this film in particular, it was absolutely the best way to go.
And like you were alluding to before, the cost of a film crew when you've got 50 to 100 people all being paid double and triple overtime and things like that on set, every minute on set really counts. So an extra day to set up green screens and things like that would have been a big cost for them as well.
Absolutely, yeah. This was not a hard sell to the studio, and certainly the director Frank Karachi, who was paramount in designing some of these shots and things. He wanted that from the beginning, and Pete Travers, the studio supervisor, it wasn't a hard sell. I mean, we all thought this was the best decision to make, so that was great.
Okay. Todd, there's a few here for you. So there's a student asking whether or not they can use, they need a commercial version of Nuke to use ZYNC, Cinema 4D supports, and then the ever-present question about security and studio viewpoints on it.
So for Nuke, I do believe you need a commercial license of Nuke in order to kick off renders. So the answer to that is yes, you do need a commercial version, not a student version. C4D support, we'll be adding that in the near future as well. That is high up on the list, along with products like Moto. And in terms of the question about security, and ZYNC is actually running on Amazon, which has undergone a third-party audit that meets or exceeds all MPAA security standards. So your data is very secure when it's on ZYNC. It's on military-grade encryption during the file I/O stage. And just for reference, ZYNC has now been used on, I think it's 13 or 14 major Hollywood feature films. It was used to render all 400 shots on the Paramount Pictures film Flight, all on ZYNC with the approval of Paramount. They did about 100 shots, I believe, on Star Trek Into Darkness, a handful of shots on the last Disney film, Lone Ranger. So security typically ends up getting cleared between the visual effects facility and the studio. But as you can see, like with Paramount and Disney, it's not been an issue. So it's not really a concern in terms of how secure the data is or what sort of standards have been taken to make sure the data is secure on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Amazon, it does give you guys great scalability as well. So it's not like people are going to try and use the service and kind of find out that, oh, wait a second, they've got to wait while other people's jobs finish. It's kind of, you can't say infinitely scalable, but it's very highly scalable.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just to speak to security as well, the transfer protocols we use to transfer data up to ZYNC as well are very highly secured, key SSH tunnels, and that part of the process is also very secure. So, in my opinion, as a business owner as well, I'm more confident in my data that's up on Amazon and with ZYNC than I am with my stuff that's sitting on my servers here, because an employee with ill intent could do much more damage with my local data than he ever could with the data that's up on ZYNC systems.
Okay. Okay, guys. Any questions about Nuke? There was a lot of interesting usage of gizmos in the 3D space in this. I found it really cool. The use of all the 20 minutes worth of capture. I mean, that's a lot of footage to deal with, especially when it's split out into so many tiles.
Yeah, absolutely. That was. I just couldn't imagine. I mean, everyone who's worked at a studio of more than one person knows that you send nodes to each other. One of the great things of Nuke's being able to do the old, hey, how'd you do that? Oh, here's my node. Go ahead and take it. And you just cut and paste into a chat window or email, and we're all used to doing that. That can work a lot of times. But when you get into a scene like this, that just to build one small part of the structure, you're looking at a node graph like this. You don't want to be cut and pasting whole sections. You're going to break stuff on the way. You're going to have to plug it back into your setup. It's not a possibility to really keep it organized. So we really took this to heart with the Gizmo idea, and really allowed us to share that data in a way that standardizes for everybody, allowing us to pick up other people's shots if someone had a vacation day or something, and really get right into it, and not, again, have to spend a lot of time figuring out where we're looking or what we're setting up at. This is all done, standard with all artists, and allowed us to be artists and be creative and not worry about making sure that section J, tile J is right, or that our colors are accurate, or that we matched the tiles together properly. It really allowed us to, this is the technical side, although important, it's, I think most of us got into business for creative stuff. And that's what this allowed us to do, because we had pre-baked most of the stuff into our Gizmo.
Very cool. All right, so we've got a question. Did Nuke slow down with all the projections and such a huge timeline? So,
Nuke does. I mean, I don't know if it slows down. I mean, it's a complex render. I can't use the word slow down, because I think with anything, you're throwing this much stuff at it. It's going to, it's going to take time to do that. I don't know if I call that slowing down, certainly, but it takes time to do these things, these projects. So. What we would do, one thing we would do, we found that when we had to load tiles that we weren't seeing, Nuke would slow down. So, for example, we have this section here in our Gizmo called visible tiles. So in this case, we're only seeing probably 6 or 7 tier 1 tiles in this frame throughout the shot. So we can go through here and turn off the ones that we're not seeing. And by doing that, they're not going to be loaded anymore. But also what we can do is, just to make even the node lighter, we also go through and delete the unused sections. And this is actually the only other piece of code we used. So we actually delete whole sections of the node graph from the Gizmo. So right now, if I do that, for example, I think we'll see some stuff go away here. I'll do A, B, and I'll do C2. I don't think that's being used here. I believe it's at the bottom of my script. So I'll go in here, and I can actually delete unused sections. And you'll see the nodes just disappeared. So that just allowed us to make it a little bit lighter weight and not load things that it doesn't need to work on. So that was one of the ways we compensated with that. But, Nuke is just, I'm not trying to sell Nuke. Obviously, I've been using it for 15 years. I'm biased. I love it. But, it can handle massive data. The problem was never Nuke with us as far as data management goes. I mean, this thing's got, hundreds of different frames to deal with. It's got all these tiles. We never had even a small concern with Nuke being able to handle this on the way in. It was just managing what Nuke can do properly to allow us to make it as efficient as possible.
Indeed. Okay, so Todd, there's a question for you about the backup policy for active production jobs. So I don't know if you want to answer that.
Great question. Yeah, so once we charge $25 per 100 gigs a month for storage, and that's totally accessible and controllable by the user. So at any point, you can go into the admin panel inside of ZYNC. So I don't know if you can flip over to that really quickly, but if you're an admin, yeah, you can actually go ahead and look at your projects and delete those if you want in the I believe it's in the projects tab. So Sean, I'll show that really quickly. Yep, so you can see the current projects, the disk usage, and delete those. So typically people keep it up there for the duration of the job since storage is so cheap. And then once they're done, they can go ahead and delete that. We're also looking at ways in the future of tying into Amazon Glacier and S3 for customers doing longer-term archival storage of their stuff in the cloud. But right now, it's a process that you can control at any point in terms of deleting footage.
Okay, great. Thank you, Todd. Okay, guys. Well, the questions seem to be slowing down a bit. Does anybody have any other questions? We've got a question. Are the servers in the U.S.?
Say that again?
So the question
Right now, we're running Amazon servers in the U.S., but the great thing about Amazon is they have locations worldwide. So if needed, we can spin up servers in other parts of the world. Amazon has locations, I believe, in Ireland, in Sydney, in Singapore, in Tokyo, in Brazil. So if it becomes necessary, we can do it. But right now, we've got customers in the UK, we've got customers in Spain, we've got customers in Germany running off the U.S. servers, and latency for file I/O really has not been that much of an issue.
And I guess one question I didn't see is that I guess people would wonder if do they have control over the ratio of the upload to download sort of traffic being used, so that they can kind of fine-tune ZYNC's interaction with their network or internet services.
Yes, yeah. There's a very close control.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I'll take this one. So we have this is a client app. This is the lightweight, extremely lightweight kind of your key into ZYNC. So this is all I have running on my machine right now, and that's actually ZYNC related. Everything else again is up in the cloud. And what this does is this does the actual uploading and downloading. This informs ZYNC about files if they've changed, if they haven't changed, and all that. So if you look at the log, you'll see like, okay, it's reporting data on this file. Is one of the things it does commonly to say this is not changed or this is changed. They'll download the files, tell us that it's downloaded them, upload the files, etc. So this is really your main connection to that upload IO section or download. And we don't separate upload versus download, but we do allow you to change the max transfers right now. So this is the number of transfers that ZYNC will attempt at any given time. It defaults to 10, but depending on your connection, you might want to go higher to say 50. You might want to go lower to 3 or 4. To make sure that you're not putting a bottleneck on your network. This is one way to control that.
Okay. And where the best place for anybody that wants to find more information about the ZYNC render service?
Yeah, you visit www.zyncrender.com. That's ZYNCRANDER.com. From there, you can sign up for an account, and we're giving free credits to anybody who wants to go ahead and try us out. So you can run a few test jobs. Sean's got the website up right there, and you can read more about us. We've got a whole bunch of tutorial videos. You can see pricing there. You can see some of the projects we've been used on. So it's a pretty complete overview of everything we've got available.
Well, I encourage everybody to check it out because cloud rendering will eventually be, pretty much the future of where all this goes. The cost of actually building out your own infrastructure is just becoming, sort of quite a burden. The speed at which computers change, it's you basically invest in a farm and watch it depreciate very quickly. So I know if I was setting up a studio after the last one, that I would definitely be keen on setting it up to be cloud-based. And for anyone out there that's a freelancer, you know that ZYNC out there is a good service. They're a partner of ours, and so you know that the Nuke support will be there, and you'll have the full service. Yeah, well, to gentleman that just made the comment, it's definitely something to consider. Certainly, as independent projects, things like that. It's going to allow you to do a lot with our softwares and other softwares as well on your projects. Okay. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, we'll say thank you very much for joining us. After you leave the session, you'll be guided to a couple of web pages, and one of them will be a survey to fill out just based on your experience with this webinar. We really do take seriously what you guys think of these sessions, so please do take the time to fill it out, give us some feedback, and keep posted in looking at our emails as they come through, both ZYNC and the Foundry. We'll be hosting more sessions like this, so the email communications will be the best place for you to pick up with those schedules. All right, so I want to say thank you to Sean and to Todd for taking the time to put together the presentation, and thank you all to everyone else for coming in and joining us.
Thanks for having me.